to share for everyone because this has been extremely helpful for clients.
Oh, is it the one on the
whiteboard downstairs? It's FERPA. Okay, so FURPA. FERPA. Fear. So this is a generalized acronym that I give for individuals because it helps us understand human beings and why they do things, not just in those state-specific elements that Alan refers to, which is so
more on
helpful.
The macro. HALT is in the micro when you need it. This is more macro.
This is more macro. So the F stands for fear. The U stands for uncertainty. The R stands for risk. The P stands for pain. And the A stands for aversion or avoidance. So most people in general, because of the way in which we develop as human beings, we don't tend to develop into the higher levels of what's called higher cortical thinking. Higher cortical thinking engages the ability to activate your regulation skill sets, for lack of better words, so that when someone says something that you don't really like, you don't immediately get hijacked, because most people live and operate in a lower development brain standpoint. And that's not against anyone. That is just natural human beings, right? Because the brain is always trying to not do extra things. If you were to given the chance to read 12 books a year or not read 12 books a year, most people would choose don't read 12 books a year because it's more energetically expensive to the brain to avoid reading 12 books. So most people are generally operating on fear, not necessarily on the opposite of fear. Most people are generally uncertain about everything. Most people avoid risk and pain. And so FERPA is a method to understand. If we understand that about human beings and recognize that not everyone's reading 12 books a year and trying to avoid the downfalls of X, Y, and Z.
Where have you used FERPA with clients?
Business owners.
What's a specific example?
Business owners that I've given this, they will rack their brains as to why their employees are struggling to just do basic things.
Yeah.
A great example was, I thought my employees are coming into work and they keep wanting to talk to me about their days. And I don't really want that as a business owner. I want them to come in and do their jobs. And then once they start getting the momentum of their jobs, then we can talk about their days. Like, I'm happy to do that, but I'm not trying to be their friend right now. And that's nothing against them. I adore them. I love my team, but something's got to give. And I'm like, wait a second, you're thinking that they want to be friends, when in reality, what they really do want underneath that is to have reassurance that they're going to keep they have their job. It sounds crazy to a business owner, but you're in the position of power, not necessarily the person who is receiving a paycheck. And so you need to be mindful of the fact that inherently, and you don't know what's going on at home, inherently they're coming into their day-to-day with fear, with uncertainty, wanting to avoid any sort of risk or pain on their every single day. And so if we accept that as not just business owners, if we can accept that about our mammalian species, that is the quote unquote default for most people, then we will have a better experience with one another, because we recognize that about our human self.
That client that is a business owner can't expect the employee to do risky things without being prompted.
Exactly.
Is that what you're saying?
And he can't expect that they're going to want to go into quote unquote perceived pain of extra work.
Yeah.
Because in the employee's mind, that is painful because it's cognitively expensive. They're having to do a little bit more than what their task was assigned the day before. And as we pull this to the context of intimate relationships, when we get into our ways of being, this is really good for the difference between a fixed mindset couple and a growth-oriented or a conscious couple. When we get into our ways as relationships, we go through that infatuation stage, we get to know each other, but then we kind of start to, maybe 2 or 3 years in, get into our normal ways of being. What happens when your partner all of a sudden wants to go and, let's say, do their PhD program, or they want to do something different than you've been doing before, that is going to be more cognitively expensive and emotionally expensive for the we, because the we has been operating in this cycle, in this system that has been comfortable. So asking
the more risk averse person is going to have reluctance, and it's going to feel like you're not supported.
Exactly.
Is that what you're saying?
And you and I have come across, Sheida, we've come across so many couples that one partner, especially in the conscious couples community, what we found is that there are conscious couples that aspire to be that quote unquote conscious relationship that is someone who is growth minded, is someone who has goals, is someone who wants to achieve and grow and also become more authentic to their true self and mitigate all the fears, uncertainty, pain, like all of that. And then they have a partner who is a little bit less risk tolerant, if you will, or maybe they're less inclined to go seek out the quote unquote perceived pain of going outside of your comfort zone by 20% as opposed to 4. So what we found in that is that acronym can apply to just help us understand where's the baseline that most likely we're going to be meeting each other and then build from there.
Okay, last thing I want to add on that, because it was great. It was a lot.
Thanks, love. It is a lot.
It's a lot. So FERPA, she has a very high, so she has a very low FERPA. She has very low fear, very low uncertainty. She has very low risk avoidance and pain avoidance. We did a 10-pound and 10-week challenge recently. I watched this woman run 5 miles on a whim in a sweatsuit at 80-degree weather, and she couldn't take a shortcut. She was on the very outer edge of our condo complex. Like she could not take a shortcut. I've never seen her take a shortcut. Being with her, if you had a non-growth oriented partner, would be this all the time. And I felt that way in past relationships too. So to bring the FERPA and the HALT thing. HALT is what you use on the micro when you're in a moment of triggered.
Hijacking.
Yeah.
Let's bring back.
FERPA is something you learn about yourself and your partner, because if you have very low fear, very low uncertainty, very high risk tolerance, and you don't avoid pain, you're going to have a really hard time with someone who is uncertain, fearful. And that person who's uncertain, fearful, not risk tolerant, and avoids pain is going to feel like an anchor that you're dragging up a hill they don't want to climb. And so hopefully that makes it all practical. And
absolutely. So basically, in a nutshell, how do you honor the I when you are lost in the we?
Nice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
And how do you make sure that you are co-creating a magnificent life together with eyes that are very different in these risk avoidance, uncertainty, fear, and all? Like, really what it comes down to is short and as maybe painful as this is going to be to hear for some people. If you have, we're not all created equal. That we are spiritually. All right. Alan Lazaros at 36 years old can, without a question, handle being with Emilia at 30. That is for sure. Me at 26, no chance. There's no way I was mature enough. I wasn't ready. And so people want to believe that we're all the same. And this is the metaphor. Intrinsically, yes. This is but physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual development, like, there's no way me at 20 could be with an Emilia at 30. And I wish more people would, they're like, I deserve better. It's like, you want to be with someone like Emilia or with someone like Alan or someone like our clients, but you don't have the growth and development necessary to actually sustain that. Emilia and I talk about this all the time. We have people that want to be around us, but then when they're around us, they don't like being around us. See, she laughs. It's like, they don't even like us. Why do they keep inviting us, right? It's like, no one wants to have this conversation. And if they did, don't invite us to the barbecue.
For an example, it's like, come on over for Thanksgiving. It's like, we can't wait for the 5K after. And no one's like, no, we didn't mention any 5K. But Alan and I need to make sure we get our exercise in. It's like, wait, why did we invite them? It's like, therefore, it's just a really small example.
So how do people know, love, when they are meant for each other versus, because we both have a past relationship where they said, we can't be with you. Like, our past partners, we each have one where they said, I'm not good enough to be with you. Yeah. And we used to say, well, with that belief, you're never going to be. That's a limiting belief. Yeah. But in hindsight, I actually think they were right. What they really weren't saying, that I do think they were trying to tell us, is I don't believe in myself enough to keep up.
And I don't have the same level of risk.
Yes.
Tolerance as you do.
Yes.
I don't have the same level of pain tolerance as you. And, and here here's what I'm not advocating for. I'm not advocating that your partner needs to be exactly like you.
Yeah, no.
However, what I do know and what
The growth
this is where we start to get
orientation has to be
into
there, though.
compatibility. This is where compatibility comes into play, personality comes into play, temperament, how we navigate our emotions, how our developmental orientation, meaning how much do we want to develop those lower level thinking parts of our brain, and how much do we want to develop as a human being. I think that that's a really important part to explore as a couple, because if you're going to be together and you want to be together, the only thing that is constant is change. We're always evolving. Whether or not you choose or elect to evolve at a higher rate is entirely your choice, either by choice or by default. That's going to happen, though. And so if you as a couple are not checking in on the growth orientation and the speed at which you're doing so, then you are very much not going to be a conscious couple, because what you're trying to say is that our past partners were essentially saying, hey, I'm not into growth, and I am not interested in risking anything, and I'm not interested in the pain that you guys have going on, aka we go outside of our comfort zone very much, and we love that. It's like an adrenaline rush for us. They were like, please cut the cord. And we were like, no, it's okay. You can do it.
You can do it.
When in reality, we weren't honoring their authenticity. Yeah. And looking back, it's so obvious, because it was like, you can do it. Beliefs change your behavior, which is true. And science shows that. They weren't willing to
want it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have to be capable of it. And Sheida, I think that's the piece that we didn't understand back then, is not everyone, this is what I use. There are 500 breeds of dog. There are also, I think, 500 breeds of human. We don't all come in the same shape and size. We don't all have the same growth orientation. We don't have the same intelligence. We don't have all the same IQ and EQ. We are not created equal in our potential. We are not. I will never be the strongest man on earth. I will never beat LeBron James at basketball, no matter how hard I try. There are levels. And if you have different goals, different core values, and different genetics than your partner in the sense of potential, as uncomfortable as this conversation is, like, it's so obvious to me that past partner of Emilia, he was gonna die. Like, you can't be with someone who's this growth oriented and not be. See, she laughs because it's so true.
Embarrassed. I'm so embarrassed looking back at.
And how obvious is that too in hindsight? Yeah. Like, one of my exes said, "Alan, dating you is like dating a fucking Stairmaster." Yeah. What she was trying to say is, do you ever stop? You go outside your comfort zone all the time. And it's uncomfortable for me. And I'm not willing to do that. Yeah. To make this practical for everybody out there, if you want to be a conscious couple, check in on the growth orientation of you and your partner. Because there's always, 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 in every relationship we've ever coached, there's a difference in growth orientation.
Yeah.
Such a good point. That's very important, actually, to be so conscious of that and mindful of that before getting into.
A lot of couples will overlook that, and then they'll get married, and then they'll have children. We watched an amazing movie last night, Sheida, called Spellbound, produced by Netflix, and it's like it's oriented towards kids, but it's incredible. And
do you
now
remember
we know
the
why.
woman they consulted with?
Dr. Carol, I want to say it's Barrett Carroll. She's a child development psychologist, and her work is actually incredible. And why I mention that is because the realism that they put behind that was, a lot of couples will get married, they'll have kids, and then all of a sudden they end up experiencing all their quote unquote problems come out while a kid is developing. And a child developing, when their parents are focused on themselves, the child internalizes that as it's their problem that mom and dad are fighting. It's their problem that mom and dad aren't getting together or getting along or whatever. And they don't feel that quote unquote what's called good enough parenting. Or safe enough parenting. And that is the quote unquote bedrock. That is the foundation for how we, again, kind of go back to the very beginning, how we interpret our emotions, the core beliefs that we have about ourselves, about other people, about the world, the schemas that we develop about the world, and the ability to regulate our emotions, the abilities to attune to ourselves and our state. And so that why I mentioned that movie is because the growth orientation, if you're not checking in on that prior to all of that happening, you end up having children that have these attachment styles that are not secure, that are insecure attachment styles. And then they end up growing apart, and they try to figure out this world at large, and they constantly come up short because they never had parents who really did some of this work. And so one of the things that I'm super proud of with the conscious couple community is that we have conscious couples that are there that have had kids, and then they can look back and then they say, you know what, we didn't do it right, but we're doing it right now. And we are taking ownership and we're apologizing to our children because we didn't know better at that time. But not knowing better is not an excuse to not doing better. And that's where conscious couples tend to outperform other couples, because they're willing to own their mistakes and take accountability to that and then go and do better. And so that growth orientation goes so far when it comes to having children, engaging with other people. So it's a whole thing.
Who your peer group is, everything.
Yeah.
It's a lot, Sheida.
I very much appreciate this conversation. Thank you for being so detailed about these topics. How do you differentiate between the pain that helps you grow versus the pain that keeps you stuck in your relationship?
That's a great question.
Whoa.
What comes up for you?
I don't think there's any pain that can't help you grow. But I do think there's constructive and destructive.
Please elaborate.
So, how do you distinguish between destructive and constructive?
So let's go back to the micro level here, because a lot of this is So I want to go to the atom level. There is something, and Sheida, this is something that I want to make as clear as possible. Everyone has a different level of self-efficacy. Mm-hmm. Do you know what self-efficacy means?
We talked about that in our interview.
So the common term is self-belief, as you mentioned, love. Self-efficacy is based on two major components. Number one is your genetics. And that's your born given. This is the nature versus nurture conversation. Yes. Okay. Are you born good at basketball, or do you get good at basketball? It's obviously both. So the genetics is number one. We don't have any control over that. So you are born the way you are. It is what it is. Some of us are Great Danes. Some of us are Chihuahuas. Some of us are Dalmatians. It is what it is. So that's number one. Number two is self-efficacy, which you can build. So Emilia used an example on our last episode of, you say, I'm going to do 5 push-ups, and then you do 5 push-ups, and then you say you're going to do 10 push-ups, and then you do 10 push-ups. That's how you build self-efficacy. So it's state-proof self-assign. To know the constructive and destructive of the original question that you asked, I think all pain can be made to be constructive. I had one client who literally was born with no arms and no legs. Her name was Pauline. And she drives a car, she learned how to swim. She's awesome.
It's amazing.
And I hear people making excuses all the time, and then I watch her with no arms and no legs live this magnificent, meaningful life. She's married, she's living in Hawaii, and she's unbelievable. She inspires the hell out of me. So my point of this is, you can make all pain constructive. I certainly had to do that growing up. However, the way that you do that is based on your level of self-efficacy. So this is what I learned. Growing up, I had a tough environment. We talked about that already. But there are people who I grew up with who didn't take it and make it constructive. Mm-hmm. So you've heard it's your adversity is your advantage. That's not true unless you have high self-efficacy. Okay? So I didn't choose this. As a kid, somehow, genetically and or my upbringing, I somehow had extremely high self-efficacy. AKA, I believed in myself a lot. So every time my past was painful and my present was painful, which was often, I found a way to go into the future and create a bigger, better, brighter future in my mind, and then reverse engineer how to achieve it, including being with Emilia Smith. Okay, long before I met her, she has a journal with all the things she wants in a man before we met. It's so cute. And I decided in advance, before I met Emilia, that I would be alone for the rest of my life if I had to, until I found someone with bigger goals and dreams prior to meeting me. And she had far bigger goals and dreams than I did when we met, which was really cool. But my point of this is that you can make all things constructive. Whether or not you will, though, is based on your level of self-efficacy. So everyone out there watching or listening, to make this as practical as possible, how much do you believe in yourself? Not how much do you want to be perceived as believing in yourself. I'm talking when you are alone, behind the scenes, in your own room, in the dark, metaphorically and literally. How much do you believe in your ability to take pain and turn it into power?
Very well said.
And if you aren't able to do that, you've got to start really small. So when Emilia says, say, I'm going to do 5 push-ups and then go do them, to me, there's a part of my ego that says, huh, that's dumb. The truth is, that is where you got to start. It takes humility to start there. And so we started with a half an hour a day of exercise, and now 3 years later, almost 4 years later, we are doing an hour now, every single day. So you got to start really small, and you got to keep small promises to yourself every day. And if you do, you can turn all pain into authentic power, to the beginning of this episode.
Beautifully said.
Thank you.
My goodness.